Framingham's Police Chief Steven Trask is retiring. After 33 years on the force and just under 2 years as chief, today is his last day. Thank you so much for your service, Chief, and thank you so much for joining me for this interview on your last day as Chief of the Framingham Police Department.
You're welcome, Audrey. Thanks for having me.
Chief, when you leave, you're taking 33 years of valuable experience with you. So let's make the most of that in this discussion today. And I would like to hear how you first would characterize the state of policing at this point in time when you're leaving this position.
Well, obviously, policing is in a state of flux right now. There is some reform that's needed. I think everyone acknowledges that. And as from a police officer's perspective, there's some confusion. But I think everyone realizes that we need to take a good hard look at how we've been performing and listen to what's going on and make the appropriate changes.
I heard a comment that I think you made, and it said something about converting from or changing a mentality about policing from maybe what was a warrior approach to more of a caretaker approach.
Sure. Yeah. So that's all part of President Obama's 21st Century Policing report, and we've been making that transition since that report came out in 2015. A lot of police departments throughout the country have made that. It goes hand in hand with demilitarizing police departments, also becoming more of a problem-solving agency, more empathetic to the people that we police, rather than solving problems rather than making arrests all the time. And we've been trying to make that transformation in Framingham.
Does that have anything to do with your decision to no longer be a part of civil service, or is that totally different?
No, that's definitely a part of us wanting to come out, and we're going to be out of civil service within the next couple of weeks as soon as the vote happens on the State House. No, that's definitely part of it. That allows us to hire the folks that we want to hire without the restrictions of civil service. It allows us to promote the folks that embrace our philosophies within the Framingham Police Department, which are strongly tied to 21st century police. So yeah, that's a huge reason why we want to come out of civil service.
So you worked pretty hard on that, and that change is going to happen right after you leave. So do you feel that that's part of your legacy?
I think that's a large part of my legacy. I think there were a couple of things, even though I was chief for just 2 years, I think we accomplished a lot of good things. First of all, we got all the men and women of the 3 unions in the police department. We got them all under contract at the same time, which is something that hasn't been done in a very long time.
How long hasn't it been done?
I think it's probably been 8 or 9 years since all 3 have been under the contract at the same time. So they're all under contract, and they all got their pay re-leveled so that they're competitive for the department that they work in. Not just surrounding departments, but the departments that are like them in the Commonwealth. And people have stopped transferring out now, and we have a list of folks that want to transfer in now, which is a complete change in dynamics, which is what we wanted to accomplish. And then, of course, the cherry on top is us becoming the largest police department in the Commonwealth to come out of civil service. It sets up the command staff for a lot of success in the very near future.
So you think one of the most immediate benefits is the ability to recruit differently and towards your specific department's goals? How has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted policing and how the force actually works together with the public? I mean, your final few months on the force must have been very different than any other time.
Very different, both internally and externally. I mean, internally, there's not as much time for the administrators to see, the rank and file of the police department, because roll calls are held outside now, very brief, to limit the interaction among officers to slow the infection. There's just not much interaction as there was prior to COVID-19. Externally, that's affected us as well. We haven't had the ability to interact with the public as much as we would like. We haven't had, neighborhood meetings. We haven't been making motor vehicle stops as much as we usually would, and a lot of those are educational stops, not so much for giving a citation, but to correct behavior and inform folks what's going on. And just, walking beats downtown, everything has changed as we've tried to limit the amount of interaction we have with the public. So it's definitely changed.
And then on top of that, obviously, there's so many political issues going on and so many societal issues going on right now. Let's first touch on this. How much do politics influence how well you and the force do your work?
For the rest of the police department, I don't think it affects them very much. And obviously, my position is more of a political position. I need to be aware of what the nature of the politics are in the city at all times. Obviously, I work for the mayor. She's an elected official, and I interact a lot with the city council, who are all elected officials. So I'm more of a political animal than the rest of the department. So I don't think it affects them on a day-to-day basis. But what I set forth as policies and goals are dictated somewhat by politics, sure.
So last year, when you submitted the flag report before the city council, you had some issues that you were very unhappy about in terms of the ability to get support from city leaders like the council, and also a feeling that maybe there wasn't the support that the force needed, and that there was maybe a little bit too much politics. And then there was also the feeling of the fact that some media was being used politically to really stifle or impact or portray the police department in a certain way.
Yeah, so this current city council, I think their record has indicated that they support the police department. They, without hesitation, approved all three of the contracts that we put in front of them. And the last one was a superior officer's contract, which allowed us to come out of civil service completely, and they fully supported that. So that has been a huge benefit to us, and it's nice to have their support.
So you feel that has changed over the past year with the change in the council?
It's gotten a lot better, yeah.
It's gotten better. Okay. So at this point in time, when we say the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Yuri Stamps, and after the killing of George Floyd, we see a whole change. We see protests. We see discussions about excessive use of force. You took a knee on the steps of the Memorial Building in a protest recently. How is that changing the way that policing is going to be structured and operated going forward?
Well, I think the first couple of days after Mr. Floyd's death, I don't think the police officers in Massachusetts thought it was going to affect them that much. I certainly didn't. I mean, obviously, no one condoned what happened in Minnesota. The actions, were disgusting, and again, no one condoned it. But we were looking at a police department that was, 3,000 miles away from us. But it was clear that our residents in our community really felt the need to voice their opinions, and we began to, as I made a statement, not only were our eyes wide open, our ears needed to be wide open and really listen to what was being said, and that was the whole reason behind myself and the command staff joining that rally and taking a knee in support, because they had something they wanted to tell us, and we had to listen.
What's your advice going forward in terms of immediate reforms versus the more longer term reforms that need to happen, even right here in Framingham?
Well, the immediate reform, we've started already re-examining our use of force policies. the mayor and I put out a joint executive order accepting the 8 can't wait, which we were doing most of those anyways in Framingham, but we wanted to solidify that in writing. For instance, chokeholds have not been authorized in Framingham for a very long time. We don't train that way, but it was not specifically prohibited in our policy. So we actually took that step, and the policy will be coming out probably early next week, putting those words in there that chokeholds are prohibited, and really embracing the 8 can't wait. And we'll continue to look at our use of force policy and our use of force reports to see what kind of trends there are. But I've looked at the last 5 years, and the use of force in Framingham is very, very low. Use of force complaints against Framingham police officers are very, very, very low. Citizen complaints are very low. And so there's always room for improvement, but I'm very satisfied with those reports and those numbers.
Okay, so they talked about recommending jail diversion, and then they also talked about training for officers and a neighborhood outreach unit.
So, yeah, I believe they talked about, problem-oriented policing, a POP unit. So we've been developing that for the last 6 months or so, but and had plans to roll that unit out sometime this summer. But with COVID-19, it really hampered our ability to do that, because we started to have staffing issues again, because our 10 people that were going to the academy got delayed by several months. We expected to have those folks out of the academy by now, and some of them are just starting the academy. But we're fully on board with that. The administration first mentioned the problem-oriented policing unit probably about 7 or 8 months ago. And that, again, goes back to the what we talked about with the getting away from the warrior mode to the guardian / caretaker mindset to solve problems rather than arrest folks.
Mm-hmm. That's not going to be an easy or quick transition. That's a whole new way of doing things. It's going to take resources that you may not even, I mean, you say a lot of that has been underway, but to a greater extent, It's going to require more of a cultural change. It's
a mindset is what it is. It's going to require more training. And again, we want to hire the appropriate people that have that mindset. And just as important, we want to promote the folks that have that mindset. Civil service promotional lists, they don't test on that. And that's what we're going to test on. If you want to get promoted in the future in the Framingham Police Department, you're going to understand what 21st century policing is. You're going to understand what a POP unit does. And you're going to understand what our use of force policy is and what a duty to intervene is. And if you don't know those things, you're not going to get promoted.
So you said that's what we're going to test on. So in other words, you are going to be able to, and the incoming chief is going to be able to create the tests.
Exactly. Yep.
And look for certain things that are the attributes that the community wants in their police force.
Exactly. That's exactly the goal. Yep.
Okay. Now you've seen the police force change over the years to become more diverse. Is it reflecting our population? Is there still work to do in that area?
There's still work to do. I think the last numbers I saw that were put out by the Mass Major City Chiefs, I think our diversity was 16 to 18%, I believe. But we're, it's a hard thing, Audrey, because we don't ask what folks' race is when we hire them. They self-identify, and so it's not an exact science for us, is what I'm trying to say. But obviously, when you look around the station, or when you look at the folks that are on patrol, your mind's eye tells you we're diverse enough or not. And I don't think we're quite there yet. We've made some huge strides in diversifying our command staff, which was a big issue. So we have bosses and leaders that more represent our community. We need to get the recruits to be more diversified at this point.
And what about the number of officers who are bilingual?
That's been fairly steady. I think we could use some more Portuguese speaking officers. And, quite frankly, we could use some more Spanish speaking officers too, but we're not so low in that area that, again, getting out of civil service, the civil service would allow us to have a special Spanish speaking list or Portuguese speaking list. They wouldn't allow it. But again, it all comes back to getting out of civil service. We'll be able to have folks that have these qualities that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. What's the status of body cams and the use of those in Framingham? And also, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how many cops carry tasers.
Okay. So we've always been, well, I won't say always, for the last several years, we've been in support of body cams in Framingham. We think that they will benefit police officers as well as the citizens. But there's a couple of issues that need to be resolved before we can go to those. One is money. The cameras themselves are not expensive, but the whole system in place that goes with the cameras is very, very expensive. For instance, if we're putting 8 or 9 police officers out a shift, that's 27, 28 officers a day, capturing 8 hours each of video. And if you need to store that for 60 or 90 days, that's a lot of storage. And so we need to have the capacity to do that, more servers and a back end to be able to serve that. Then we're going to need employees in order to retrieve that, because when you capture the video, then you inevitably will get the request to see those videos, the FOIA requests. And so we need to be able to produce those in a timely fashion and redact what needs to be redacted and present it in a format that can meet those requirements. That takes personnel and time, and that's something that's going to cost a lot of money. And then there's the other issues of privacy. When a camera goes on, does the police officer have the ability to shut that camera off? And if he or she does, what does that look like? How do they have the ability to shut a camera off? And if they don't have the ability to shut the camera off, how do we get around the hurdle of, we're human beings. We have conversations with our spouses on cell phones. We use the restroom. We go into places, calls where somebody may not want to be recorded. Someone calls us to their home on a matter that they don't want to have on video. So other jurisdictions can get over those hurdles. I'm sure we can too. And I think body cams are coming, but it's not a quick fix. It's not going to come in the next couple of months. But
what do you think it would cost on an annual basis?
Again, we're talking about several employees. So I would say it's at least it's probably about $500,000 a year going forward. So.
And do you know what the initial purchase would cost?
Again, I don't think that's a real stumbling block. I think these cameras themselves are anywhere from $75 to $150 a piece. So you're looking at
more the ongoing costs. Okay.
Yeah, more the yep.
Yeah. What about the tasers? How many Framingham officers carry them?
Just about every. I think every officer on patrol has one. If not, they'll be issued one very shortly. But I think every officer that's in uniform is carrying a taser right now.
Okay.
Looks like myself, I don't carry one. The command staff, administrators, we don't carry them.
You've talked about coming out of civil service and being able to hire the people that align more closely with your goals and objectives. But are people applying? Have you seen any impact of all of this on the number of applicants coming in or the people interested in going into law enforcement?
So we're still currently under civil service. So, but I can tell you that the amount of people that took the civil service test the last time it was offered in March of last year, I believe, significantly down. And I can only imagine the next exam is going to be trending in an even worse direction. But we've had candidates that were set to go to the academy at the end of July after a 7 or 8 month process. of being certified and ready to go to the academy, and they've withdrawn. So they've changed their mind about entering law enforcement in this period.
How are we going to overcome that?
We're going to overcome it by getting out of civil service and being able to streamline the process. And if we can't find appropriate entry-level recruits, then we'll be able to take laterals from not just Massachusetts, from all over the country.
But do you think that the general interest in going into policing is waning any?
Absolutely. And, that's a nationwide problem. So I don't have an answer how to get over that at this point. But
Okay.
that's a nationwide concern.
When you hear people say things like defund the police, how do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I want to hear what they want to do when they say defund the police. I've heard folks say, let's defund the police and take the money that we're spending on the SROs in the school department and divert it to other things. Well, there are no money spent on the SROs in the school department. That's all out of the Framingham Police Department. And then I hear conversations about the Framingham Police should be defunded and the money should be spent on a co-responder type program that has social workers responding to these calls. Well, we've done that for 17 years here in the Framingham Police Department. We've had a co-response program for 17 years, the first in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I think some of it is misinformation. I think that these are larger discussion.
So when you're at home and you see something on the television or you hear something in the news about another killing using excessive force, and then you hear people talk about bad cops, I mean, it must just make your blood boil.
Yeah, I mean, I understand people's frustration, and it makes everybody's. It makes my blood boil when I see that activity, and then also when I hear the response, because I know what our numbers are, and I know what the numbers are in the Northeast, and we do a much better job, I think, than the rest of the country. We have some world-class police departments in Massachusetts, and our numbers are staggeringly low. But every time you see one of those incidents, it gives everybody pause to think about what we could do better.
You mentioned the SROs, the school resource officers, and there's been some talk lately about there's two petitions, one to keep them and one to eliminate them and to take the police officers out of the schools. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are we've had SROs for over 20 years without a problem. That is a group of officers that I never worry about. They're excellent at what they do. They're well trained to deal with young adults, and they've got a track record of proven results within the schools. They've gotten awards from not only the law enforcement side, but more importantly from the educational side for the work that they've done. And it just it makes me sad for them that their legacy of hard work is being tarnished without really a lot of facts.
Yeah, I can understand that, and it's important facts. I think how do you get those facts out there? Are you working on? Is there a program underway to better educate the public and to help people understand what's actually happening versus what people are saying or believing?
Well, I mean, I want to be clear too. There is a population of students that have voiced their concerns and have been affected in a negative fashion by the presence of the SROs. They've made that clear. So my position is we'd like to have a discussion about that and see how we can operate better. But the SROs are in the school by invitation, and if the public schools do not want us in there, we're not going to force our way in. We'll redeploy and we'll move our assets somewhere else. But it's been a great relationship for a long time, and I think it needs a careful decision making before we just end it very quickly.
Chief, over the course of 33 years in Framingham, you've seen the city, the town. It was a town, a city. You've seen the population. So many changes. How do you think it's changing now and differently than in the past? And what's the trajectory in your view?
Well, I mean, I think Framingham is changing, much like the rest of the country is changing. Changing demographics, younger folks, want their voices to be heard, and they have a different mindset of the way they want their country run, and they have a different mindset on how they want their police departments to operate. Change isn't bad. It's just I think we just need to listen to what's going on and come to some type of common ground. But it's certainly much different than when I started in 1987. That's for sure. The city and policing is totally changed.
Is there anything you wish didn't happen while you were chief?
I've been pretty happy with the things that we've gotten done as my time as chief. Yeah, a couple of things I wish COVID-19 didn't happen when I was the chief. That really changed a lot of the things that we had planned. We were so close to being at full staffing right around it last November, and then the academies got put on hold, and folks retired, and then we have budget issues now. But last October, November, we were right on the 1 yard line to be fully staffed and really be able to operate the way that I wanted to operate. And then, life gets in the way.
Would you consider getting another job as a chief somewhere else in the future?
I'm going to the beach. Not right now. Not right now. I'm gonna take some time and relax with my wife and my kids, and I will be out, Audrey, but it won't be in Massachusetts, that's for sure.
So with just a few hours left before you walk out of that office for the last time, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling, I've got mixed emotions. I mean, I've had a good morning so far. I saw Ron Brandolini get sworn in as the acting chief. They hung my picture on the wall, which is customary for the retiring chief to have his picture put on the wall. So, and a lot of good friends have been popping in my office and calling me on the phone. Of course, we're unable to have any type of ceremony with the social distancing, but folks have been coming in one or two at a time and just calling me and texting me, and so that's been nice.
Well, Chief, I want to just say thank you so much for your years of service. Wishing you the best in everything you pursue in the future. And I'm sure you have left a legacy here for Framingham. And any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I just want to thank the residents of Framingham for giving me this opportunity. And most of all, I want to thank Yvonne Spicer, the mayor of Framingham, for giving me this opportunity. This has been a dream come true for me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Thanks, Audrey.